and welcome to this video. My name is Chris from christopherhole.com, and in this video we are going to be looking at triathlon training and more specifically at core strength, as it is the foundation to all movement and especially sports performance. If we've got a good core strength, we're only ever going to build and improve our sports performance. So what does core strength do? Well, as I've said, it improves performance. But what it also does is it prevents injury. Now this is such a key, because if we can prevent injury, we can further improve our performance. So not only are we improving our performance by doing core strength, we're preventing injury, which is going to take it that step further anyway. So how do we improve our core strength? Well, there's two principles that I'm going to talk about in this video anyway. The first one is a neutral spine. The second one is core activation. So how do we have to activate our core when we're training? Now, a lot of people talk about training, and they say if we aren't in neutral for the event, then why do we train for it? Or they say in some cases they say it's not even necessary. We don't even need to train in neutral because we're not in neutral for our event. So, you know, and that in a sense holds some truth, because in swimming we twist. Obviously the hips and shoulders are twisting as we're picking up the water and stroking through. In cycling we're obviously in a hunched position, so we're not in neutral again. The only time we might be in neutral is running, but again we've got that twisting effect where the hips and the shoulders are going to leave each other. But as we go through, I'm going to hopefully help to explain why we need to train in neutral prior to the event, so when we come to the event we can then in a sense leave our neutral posture. Okay? So neutral spine, what is it? Well, it's the natural S-curves of the spine. And what does it do? Well, it's the alignment of the spine that is optimal and is the best position from which the trunk muscles work. So if we want our trunk muscles to work properly, we have to train in neutral. If we continually train outside of neutral, our core muscles won't be working at the most effective. So then when it comes to the event that we're going to be doing, again, they're not going to be working at their most effective. So we've got to be able to maintain this thing called a neutral spine as we train. Now this means as we train in the gym. So we're obviously going to be doing some gym work for our core strength. This is the time to maintain neutral. So whatever exercise we're doing, be it deadlift, squat, lunges, presses, pulls, chops, you know, whatever the movement, carrying, it doesn't matter. We have to maintain neutral. Okay? So, core activation. So we're maintaining a neutral spine for core activation. Now what we have to understand is principle number one is the core muscles prevent movement. They are not there to create it. That is the job of the limbs. The job of the core muscles are there to prevent movement, to allow the limbs to create more power. Okay? Now what this means is, we'll take, let's say running for instance. Now there is a period of time when we run that both feet are off the floor. This is the point where our core is at its most relaxed. It's not completely relaxed, but it's at its most relaxed. Soon as our foot hits the floor, a pulse happens in our core. So all the muscles contract, or that's the idea anyway. So they all contract when our foot hits the floor. So as the hips generate the power, it pushes against the core to propel us forward. And the example that I can use for that is the picture that you can see just down here in the bottom of the screen. You've got a sprinter and he's got some blocks. Now what a sprinter does with the blocks is he will fix them to the floor, be it pinning, screwing, you know, however, they're fixed to the floor. So when his hips generate the power, the force from the hips is transferred down the leg and through the foot, pushed against the foot plate, so he's propelled forward fast. If those pins aren't pinned into the floor, when he generates the force in the hips and it's transferred down the leg out the foot plates are going to move backwards, propelling him not as far forwards or not as fast forwards. So again, we've got to use our core like the foot plates. They've got to be pinned, they've got to be strong, and they've got to be stable. So when the force is generated and push against it, it's there stable so it can propel the body forward. Now the same goes for swimming and cycling. Obviously there's a generation of power in the arms. If our core is weak, then that power is going to be lost through the core, so it's not then going to be taken through our arm and out into the water to propel us forward. Okay, so hopefully that sort of sheds some light as to sort of core activation and the function of our core. So number one, it's there to prevent movement, and two, it works in pulses. So every time our foot hits the floor in a run, or we hit the downward part of a pedal stroke, or we pick up our water and stroke through in our swim, our core needs to be activating as a pulse. And finally, preventing injury. So again, we need to maintain a neutral spine to prevent injury. Now here is a quote here from Callaghan and McGill in 2001, and it goes like this: evidence of the process of disc herniation provides a proof of principle. For example, the damaging mechanism leading to herniation or prolapse is repeated lumbar flexion. Now what that means is quite wordy, but basically what it means: repeated lumbar flexion, so exercises like sit-ups, crunches, side bends, back extensions, Russian twists, whatever the exercise is, deadlift, where we flex our back, or we're not supposed to, but if you do, you use incorrect technique and flex your back. Squat, if you flex your spine in a squat, if you flex your spine in a push or a pull, or a, whatever it might be, or a press or a chop. Anytime we flex our spine, we are using the damaging mechanism leading to herniation or prolapse. Okay. Now, what that means, if you look at the diagrams here down at the bottom, we've got two discs. Over here is a normal disc, over here is a herniated disc. This bit in the middle is a gelatinous fluid. This bit round the outside is sort of, well, let's call it a wall, like a fibrous wall. So it's encapsulating the fluid. Now, with repeated lumbar flexion, what happens is you gradually start pushing on the outside of the wall. Now, if we flex forward, obviously it's going to be pushed towards the back. If we use the example of an orange pip, if you put an orange pip between your index finger and your thumb, if you push down on the front of the pip, where's it going to pop? It's going to pop out the back, isn't it? That's exactly what's happening with this fluid here. So the fluid with repeated lumbar flexion is being pushed against the back. As it's being pushed against the back, it's breaking through the wall, or this fibrous wall. And then eventually, when it breaks through, it touches on the nerve and gives us a pain. Okay? So what we have to understand is not only for our muscles to work properly that we have to maintain neutral, but also we have to maintain neutral to prevent this injury mechanism of herniation or prolapse. So whenever we go into the gym, whatever exercise we're doing, we have to maintain neutral spine, because this is only going to improve our sports performance or triathlon performance out on the track, as it were. All right. Neutral spine is the foundation. If we train in neutral spine, we give ourselves the buffer when we come out of neutral spine to be able to cope with that stress. Okay, that's the reason why we train in neutral. When you're strong in neutral, then you have the conditions or the buffers, or the back has a coping mechanism to cope with the stress. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. All right, so whenever we go into the gym for training, for core strength, we have to use neutral spine. 1, because it's going to improve performance. 2, because it's going to prevent injury. Okay, many thanks for listening. My name is Chris from ChristopherHole.com. I will speak to you in another video.